Previously on Far From Home, my brother and I got some bad news about our beloved vehicle.
I couldn't believe that you put inside your car eggs.
I know.
Just one egg.
One.
Yeah.
No yolk, no yellow, only the white.
Just the white.
It doesn't matter, you put egg.
Drew pushed for the egg, right?
Yeah.
I could tell. I could spot a guy that'll use an egg to fix a radiator from a mile away.
Gasket. Oh, head gasket?
So we blew the head gasket. That's what we did. And it seemed like it would take a while to repair.
Coming Sunday, and we need 1 day for reconstruction car.
1 day to repair it, so that would be Monday. So that's a week.
That's crazy.
Yeah. As we sat in the open-air courtyard of our hotel in Bukhara, Uzbekistan, surrounded by whitewashed walls and echoing conversations from other guests, we assessed the situation and considered various options. We could scrap our car and buy a new one, hitch a ride with another rally team, or squeeze into our friends Rosie and Jane's car for the rest of the trip.
If there is any way flipping possible of us all getting to Mongolia, we will get to Mongolia. If I thought we could tow you all the way, we will. On a flat, as you know, we could tow you to the nth degree because it's rolling.
If you're going uphill and
if you're going uphill, you are pulling. You are pulling the weight all the way. And that is a hell of a hike to put a car of that under pressure. That's like taking an 80-year-old donkey. It is. Let's face it, they're workhorses, but there is a limit.
They're workhorses, but they're donkeys.
Yeah. You see, yeah, exactly.
My thought is that we've pushed your car quite a bit by pulling ours, and I think we're done towing. We're right here. We're in a city that has access to parts, albeit bringing them in from Tashkent or Dubai or where have you.
Yeah.
We're in a comfortable place. I think we figure it out here. Because we can't tow further and
No.
chance screwing up your car, that's not fair.
Well, the thing is from everything we've seen in terms of the garage you're in, it would appear to be a reputable garage from a big company. You're in the best place.
We'd come all this way, and we really wanted to make it to the finish line, so it was hard not to feel a bit stressed. But Jane told us to chill out. We'd already had quite an adventure, she said, so even the worst-case scenario probably wasn't that bad.
The thing is, it is an old car with a lot of mileage on it. So, something could quite easily go wrong with ours. And if something goes wrong with ours, then we are out. If yours is gone and ours is gone, we're gone. And then we just go to Moscow and drink vodka. We have our flights booked out of Moscow, and it would be rude not to.
Always go to Moscow, drink vodka.
You've got to have a plan B.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody should have a plan B.
I'm Scott Gurian. I'm a longtime public radio and print reporter, and I've created this podcast called Far From Home to document the unexpected adventures and chance encounters I have with interesting people around the world. To start off, I'm telling the story of a massive road trip my brother and I took with our friends, raising money for charity. We drove nearly 11,000 miles.
11,000?
That's right, a quarter of the way around the Earth, from London to Mongolia, through 18 countries, 8 time zones, 5 mountain ranges, and a few deserts, in a ridiculously tiny car.
It's like the Beverly Hillbillies.
It's not for the faint of heart.
It's the adventure, isn't it? It's just the thing of pushing yourself to the absolute limit, because I think it's going to take us out of our comfort zone, but in a really good way.
If you're just joining me, I suggest you first go back and listen to all the previous episodes in order to get up to speed and for all of this to make a bit more sense. From language barriers to car trouble, getting horribly lost to paying bribes to shady traffic cops, it's been quite an amazing experience, and over the coming episodes, I'll be bringing all of you along with me for the ride. After having a long chat with Rosie and Jane, my brother and I realized that none of our options at this point sounded very attractive or logistically doable. The best course of action would simply be to hope that the mechanic would be able to fix our car and that the repair wouldn't bankrupt us in the process. You see, a head gasket itself isn't a terribly expensive part to replace, but it tends to be buried deep under the hood, so it can take a full day or more of work to disassemble the car just to get to it. And while we knew the cost of labor in a place like Uzbekistan would be far less than it would be back home, we knew this wouldn't be a cheap repair. Rosie asked my brother and me how much we'd be willing to spend.
If it costs $500 to fix, I'm fine with that. If it costs,
It's going to. I would
Easily.
be highly surprised if it didn't cost you a minimum of twice that.
sure.
Jane chimed in.
The trouble is, it's an emotional price. It's not a practical
Well, that's the
price.
thing. We're so determined. We've come this far.
If this was your own car, in let's say you lived in the UK, you'd paid $500 for a car. If it was going to cost you $2,000 to replace it, you wouldn't do it.
No.
You wouldn't pay $1,000. It's too expensive. You wouldn't do it. But this is very much an emotional thing that you have to do. And I think until you know what price it's going to be, you can't make that decision.
It's not the car, is it? As Jane says,
the whole journey.
it's actually the journey. It's actually this is what I'm paying in order to achieve this,
Of course.
rather than this is what I'm paying to mend the car.
Complicating matters was the fact that there were no guarantees.
I mean, if you're spending more than you initially spent on the car to get it on the road again, you need to feel as though it's in very good shape to continue.
I was about to say, for me, that's the scary thing, that we still
spend that
have
money.
no certainty
I know.
that's the problem sorted.
Because after the litany of mechanical problems we'd experienced over the past few weeks, it was hard not to feel a bit fed up.
We need to speak to the garage and get everything diagnosed possible this week and see if there's any other issues that can be looked at, fixed, and same with your car.
Yeah.
Because as far as I see, this is kind of the last straw, right? I mean, if we're waiting here a week to get a new part, if they get that part, put it back in, and there's still an issue, then it's done, you
Yeah.
know? Because if there, God forbid, is another part that they end up needing, there is no time.
Can't wait another week.
No. Absolutely not. You can't wait another day or two at that point. I mean, you gotta...
Yeah, we're getting dangerously close to needing to
Absolute
get through
failure.
While the Mongol Rally wasn't a race, we were still in a bit of a time crunch because there was a final date by which the organizers said we had to arrive at the finish line. And more importantly, Drew, Jane, and Rosie had already booked their non-refundable flights home through Moscow on September 9th, which was now just 4 weeks away. At the time they made their reservations, that didn't seem like it would be much of a problem, since Rosie had built in several buffer days to our itinerary to allow for unexpected delays like the car trouble we'd been experiencing. But suffering a setback of an entire week wasn't something we had expected. So at this point, we really couldn't afford to fall behind any more than we already were. See, this sucks because we're back in this situation now where we're kind of having to rush and shave off time where we can, and that was kind of the whole situation we didn't want to be in.
The tough thing is we just, of course, need to really stay on schedule, and if there's any excess time in a day and it's a place that doesn't seem great, we just need to barrel through. We have to. Because we have to be able to anticipate any potential issues anywhere else.
We just got to keep going.
After getting a good night's rest, we went the following morning with Jane and our hotel owner Rustam back to the repair garage to check on our car. When we arrived, we found it still up on a lift with the hood raised, the front tires removed, and wires dangling from underneath. Here's our engine.
Excellent, good.
Standing under the car, I was able to look right up to the ceiling through a giant hole where the engine had been taken out. Now it was sitting on a small metal table with liquid pooling around it.
Here's the water that came out of
Look at all the water that drained out. Wow. It was a sorry sight to behold. When they saw us examining the car, a few of the mechanics shook their heads, as if to say this was one of their tougher cases. They showed me the head gasket they'd removed, which looked crusty and discolored from greenish corrosion and rust.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
We asked them to confirm when exactly the new head gasket would arrive and how much the repair would cost, but they still didn't know. Don't worry, it'll be cheap, Rustam assured us. This is Uzbekistan. Back at the hotel, Drew tried to look on the bright side.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me or my general outlook on life, but despite the fact that our car is currently dead in the water, it can always be a lot worse. We have it pretty damn good right now. We're in an amazing little hotel in Bukhara in a beautiful city, and we have a mist fan blowing down on us, and we're drinking wine. This doesn't completely suck. I mean, our car's in the shop right now. It's being handled by professionals who we hope are the best at what they do, and I think that they are. And we could be stranded on the side of the road in the desert right now, and we're not.
And we've come pretty damn close to that, haven't we?
We have.
It was true. after our hectic travel schedule over the past few weeks, it was nice to have a well-deserved break in a place that seemed safe and comfortable, despite the soaring heat. Just down the block was the historic city center, a World Heritage Site with centuries-old mosques and monuments, a fortress, and a market selling hand-painted dishes and local crafts. We realized that even though the mechanics were now telling us we'd probably be stuck here until the following Tuesday, it might not actually be all that bad. But just as we began settling in, Rosie introduced a new problem to the mix.
So do you want to hear the latest teeny-weeny, tiny little complication that I've just discovered?
I guess.
Are you sure? Mine and Jay's visas expire on Sunday for Uzbekistan.
Are you serious?
Yeah. We only got a 7-day visa. I don't think we had a choice about it.
Alright.
So we're going to try and see if there's an immigration office around and see if we can get an extension, but we know how successful that was last time.
Well, this is a different country.
It is, but we don't want to spend all day, every day in there trying to get it sorted.
No, I'm totally with you.
But that's...
Complicates things.
It does complicate things. Quite substantially, actually. It'll mean me and Jane leaving at least 2 days beforehand, and we don't want to be separated. Let's just see. Sorry, I'm probably jumping ahead, and maybe we just need to wait until tomorrow and find out if there's any possibility.
Smart and proactive.
Is that what we're being?
We're worrying a bit, but we are being proactive, and we're thinking of all the potential possibilities, which is important.
Yeah. So, yeah, maybe we just need to really find out when this part arrives. But plan B will be to try and get an extension on the visa. Really don't know how easy that is. Plan C will be we're going to have to find a way of getting out of the country. And then waiting for you guys to meet up with us somewhere. Bummer.
Jane tried looking up information about where to extend a visa, but she didn't have any luck. So we discussed our dilemma with Rustam, and the next day he drove all of us to a nondescript white stucco building hidden down a side street in a part of town most tourists would never go.
Well, it doesn't exist on the web, let's put it that way, because I searched.
You couldn't find anything?
Nah.
Rustam went inside while we waited in the car, and a few minutes later he returned with some good news.
We are coming first day in week.
Monday.
We are coming Monday, and we are put in...
He said if we came back the following Monday, they'd be able to add a 3-day extension to Rosie and Jane's visas, which sounded great, but there was just one problem. They'd have to wait until after their existing visas expired. But we didn't really have a choice.
That's absolutely definite. Absolutely.
Positive, 100%?
Okay.
Yes, it's 100%.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, let's go.
Okay.
Living life on the edge. You know what they say? It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah. And how much you bribe them.
Yeah. Local knowledge.
So now, all we could do was wait. I wish I could say we used the downtime to do a bunch of sightseeing, but after having dinner at a local restaurant that second night, we all got some sort of nasty stomach bug, so we spent the next few days in close proximity to the toilet, and none of us had much of an appetite. Seeing how sick we were, Rustam gave all of us double shots of vodka mixed with salt one morning at breakfast, which he said was a natural remedy that would surely cure us of our ills. All it did was make us tipsy at 9 o'clock in the morning. Thankfully, with the help of some medicine from a local pharmacy, we did eventually get better. But then we were hit with yet another unexpected challenge.
Have you guys sort of been able to stay up to date with postings that have been coming in from other groups?
According to the chatter on the Rally Facebook group, several teams ahead of us were reporting that Mongolian officials had suddenly started requiring all of us to pay a hefty vehicle deposit of several $1,000s at the border to ensure we wouldn't abandon our cars in their country. And while it would supposedly be refunded when we left, handing over such a large sum of money made us uncomfortable.
I mean, we're talking 9.6 million Mongolian
What was it?
yaks
About
or
five.
whatever they are.
It's about $5,000.
It was about 5,000, yeah.
It's not worth
I mean,
the
that's
risk.
not
It's
really.
not worth the risk.
It's not worth. Yeah.
It's way too much.
That's really
if it
not
was
an
a few
option.
$100s, sure, but we can't risk $5,000 with the potential of not getting it back.
No.
There's no reason to trust that we will get it back.
Well, and even if you could, just the logistics of you've got to pay in local currency, so you've got to take a taxi to the
they're making
ATM. It's no, they don't want us there.
No.
The adventurists, the group organizing the Mongol rally, said they were working to get more information, but they weren't hopeful there'd be a quick or an easy solution. In short, it sounded like potentially really bad news, since it threw our entire plans into disarray.
Unless miraculously something is resolved in the next week or whatever, we're basically not going to Mongolia.
No.
Yeah.
I'd give it a 5% shot. I have no faith that we're going to be able to go through Mongolia. 0.
So we need a plan B, C, D, E, F and G.
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, the disappointment's huge, to be perfectly frank, for me anyway, because, you know, A, it's the Mongol rally, B, it was the whole, you know, going to Mongolia and actually doing that drive through Mongolia. You know, I just was so excited about doing that. I'm just really pissed to find that we can't do it, but I honestly think we have to have a contingency plan and that, you know, it's not going to happen.
Now, if you've listened to this podcast from the beginning, you might remember that I explained that although this event is called the Mongol Rally, and we often told people we were driving from London to Mongolia, the actual endpoint was in Ulan-Ude, Russia, just north of Mongolia. So, sure, it would still be technically possible to complete the journey, but was it really worth taking an unexciting 1,500-mile detour across Siberia just to get to the finish line?
Well, the thing is it's just a complete anticlimax. If you bypass Mongolia to get to Ulan-Ude, it's just, we were doing it to go to Mongolia, it's just that we had to end up in Ulan-Ude because that's where you had to end up.
Yeah.
On the flip side, to get rid of our car, we either need to go all the way back to the EU or we need to go to Ulan-Ude.
You see, if we made it to the finish line, the rally organizers would help us legally dispose of our vehicles. But if not, we couldn't just end wherever we wanted, or we'd be forced to pay expensive import duties. Our only other choice would be to hang a left at some point and head back to Europe. So the four of us took out our maps and began discussing our options.
One possibility is to drive north from Uzbekistan to Tajikistan to Kyrgyzstan into Kazakhstan, through Kazakhstan to Novosibirsk, which is the capital of Siberia, and then east to Ulan-Ude and the finish line.
If we don't go to Ulan-Ude, what is our end plan? Where are we driving to? What is our destination?
We can't end in Moscow because we need to bring our car back.
Sure, so the second option would be to drive west towards Moscow, St. Petersburg and into Latvia. We end in one of the Baltic states, potentially, because they're all EU members, so we can probably dispose of it there.
You would have to go through Lithuania, Poland, Germany.
The main reason we're considering turning back is that we're thinking it's not going to be a very interesting drive. The question is, if we go west and go through all of Kazakhstan and Russia, is that going to be any more interesting, you know?
This one route that it's mapped actually takes us past the Aral Sea.
I think we want the most interesting route, you know, possible given the limitations.
As I listen back to this conversation now, I'm amazed at how preposterous it all seems, making spur-of-the-moment plans to drive thousands of miles to random countries we've never been. And the more we spoke, the more ridiculous our ideas became.
If I can't go to Mongolia, I love the idea of driving up to the Arctic Circle. Ferry to Helsinki, up to the Arctic Circle before heading south through Sweden, Norway and back into Europe.
That's right. For a brief moment, we seriously considered driving all the way through Scandinavia and then hopping on an overnight ferry back to the UK. But that plan was quickly abandoned when we realized there's no way we'd have time for such a journey.
If we were going to divert and do something as crazy as like go up to the Arctic Circle, that's really cool. But I sort of feel like if we turn back west, just to like backtrack for the sake of getting back to the EU, it feels like defeat.
You're right.
Not that I'm expecting a big party in Ulan-Ude. I never was. I could care less about a finish line party. I just like the feeling of knowing that we got there.
The problem is that we're making decisions in a headspace that isn't good at the moment, because we've had a week of sitting here, we've had a week of frustration, we've had a week of being ill.
Our morale is pretty low.
Our morale is very low, and I'm very aware of that we need to pick it up. You know, are we looking for the easy option, or are we making decisions purely for convenience, or are we making the right decisions, I guess?
Rosie was right. It was hard to make decisions with everything else that was on our minds. But after discussing it further, Drew managed to convince the rest of us to keep heading toward the finish line, even if entering Mongolia no longer appeared to be part of our plans. Jane and Rosie had to run to the bank to change some money before it closed. After they left, my brother expressed the frustration I too was feeling.
It's strange in that having a week of going nowhere has really killed the momentum for us. And it just really kind of sucks now. It's great, we're on vacation, but this feels really exhausting and I don't really, there doesn't seem like a really great solution for it. We're not going to get through Mongolia, and it's going to be a mad dash because of our car issues, and I don't know what other option we have though.
Even if there weren't issues with going into Mongolia, this would be a problem. You know, having this breakdown, being delayed this time, you know, it's like we didn't allow enough wiggle room to take things like this into account.
Not a week of downtime, and everything has taken us longer than we anticipated.
Yeah.
And I think our energy level is just zapped by sitting here. Yeah, I don't know. I just want to go. It just, at this moment, it doesn't feel exciting.
We've been sitting here a week. You know, we've been stuck in Uzbekistan.
Yeah. Which is really unfortunate. But we'll see what happens.
When Monday rolled around, Rustam's wife drove Jane and Rosie back to the immigration office to get extensions on their visas. Now, remember, their visas had technically expired by this point, so there was a really tense moment when they got pulled over at a police checkpoint on the way there. As Jane later told the story, Rustam's wife got visibly nervous, and her hand started quivering as she handed over her identification, mindful that she was shuttling 2 foreign tourists who were technically in the country illegally. Thankfully, the cop never asked to see their passports, so they were allowed to continue on their way. And then, what should have been a simple process got bogged down in bureaucracy when the immigration office sent them back to the bank to pay for the visa extensions.
Where the money then gets exchanged for a little piece of paper, and there's lots of stamping going off along the way, obviously.
And we're signing, God only knows what.
We have no idea what we're signing.
So they go back with their receipts, thinking they've done everything they have to do, and this time immigration officials say they need more time to get letters from both the hotel and the mechanic to prove that the women were being delayed because of a broken car. Rosie and Jane were waiting outside when Rustam's wife returned to deliver the news.
We said, is it sorted? And she said, 8 o'clock tonight. And we said, we have to wait until 8 o'clock? No. We have to come back at 8 o'clock? No, it'll come to the hotel. We thought, how does that even work?
In other words, the immigration office said, trust us. We're going to hold on to your passports for now, but we promise we'll bring them back to you later on with stamps showing you'll be here legally once again beginning tomorrow. But in the meantime...
So you're illegal today?
We're illegal today. We have spent the whole of today in Uzbekistan as illegal immigrants. It's just been very stressful. Anyway, there you go. What a day. I've never been an illegal immigrant before, so I've always said I want to have an opportunity to do everything at least once.
When evening came without any further word, we got kind of nervous, so we called back the immigration office, and then they changed their story, saying the passports would instead be returned the following morning. Thankfully, just as we finished breakfast the next day, they did finally show up, and we all breathed a giant sigh of relief. Now, while all this was going on, there was a drama of a different sort playing out 1,000 miles away. You see, days earlier, a head gasket for our car had been found in an auto parts market in Dubai. From there, it was shipped to Tashkent on the other end of Uzbekistan, handed to a taxi driver, and was driven another 7.5 hours through the night to arrive at our mechanic in Bukhara early Monday morning. After installing the new part, the garage spent all day Monday putting our engine back together, but the car still wouldn't start. So then they had to take things apart and try again. Finally, around 10:30 in the evening, they called us with an update.
Apparently they've started the car.
Well, that's good news.
But they need another 2 hours to, troubleshoot.
Because you said they had to flush oil through it twice.
Well, they're doing that now.
They're doing that now, okay.
So you said it'll be ready 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Finally, there was some light at the end of the tunnel. If all went according to plan, our Micro would be running again in no time, and we'd also have a new sump guard to protect the bottom of our car from the rocky terrain on the second half of our journey. We didn't need things to be perfect. We just needed our car to make it a few more weeks to the finish line, and then it would be scrapped. That said, the roads ahead were going to get a lot worse, so we had to make sure we were prepared, even if those preparations were somewhat expensive.
We're about to drop about $700 today on the car.
On the head gasket.
Head gasket and, well, more than $700, maybe $800. Yeah. Between getting the engine rebuilt, sump guard, and head gasket. And then we're basically going to drive it for another 2.5 weeks and then kill it.
I mean, it seems like an enormous waste of money, I agree, but we were never going to keep the car anyway.
I agree.
You know?
It was a big chunk of money for sure, but less than half of what it would have cost to replace a head gasket back home. And if there was a silver lining to all this, it was that dumping all this money into our car made us more determined than ever to make it to the finish line, so our investment paid off. On Tuesday morning, we checked our email and got some surprisingly good news. After several days of intense negotiations and with help from the British Embassy, the adventurists had actually managed to work out a deal with the Mongolian government, so now we'd be able to go to Mongolia after all. It was a huge relief, and it put all of us in a really great mood. We ate some breakfast, then returned to the garage to pick up our car. We'd been feeling pretty restless, so we were thrilled to finally hit the road once again. But as we drove away, something seemed different.
It sounds like a muffler, like exhaust type of issue. It sounds just a little bit louder and ruder than it normally is.
Yeah, I mean, the car's definitely a lot noisier now than it was before. I don't remember it sounding like this. And then
it's not much louder. It's just when you step on the gas.
Well, that's the other thing. So you need to step on the gas more when you start it up.
Yeah, because it's starting at a lower...
like RPM or something.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's like it's not as powerful as it was.
The car just didn't seem like its old self. As we continued on, we debated what could possibly be wrong with it this time.
You'd think with everything they've done new, it would be better than it was, you know?
But they've rebuilt all of the park, they've cleaned it out completely, it's going to act differently.
Rosie and Jane were driving behind us, and just then they spoke up on the walkie-talkie.
Really? That's not good.
What'd they say?
They said we're blowing a lot of smoke out of the exhaust. I don't know what to do.
It was odd, since we'd gotten a new exhaust installed just before starting our trip. Rustam had told my brother at one point that the mechanic mentioned something about there being a gap where the exhaust pipe meets the engine, but that it couldn't be fixed and we shouldn't worry about it. Seeing all this smoke, however, it was hard not to be concerned.
We haven't had any issues until now, and suddenly we're having problems. When we first pulled into that garage, I mean, they had all the cars there. It looked very professional. I thought our car was in good hands. Now I kind of don't think it was.
Because although our car was running once again, the old problems had been replaced by new ones. On top of that, we'd lost faith after we gave the garage our spare battery to recharge earlier in the week, and they accidentally installed it in another car, and we had to twist their arms to replace it. But most importantly, there was this gut feeling my brother had gotten about this particular mechanic.
He didn't seem to, care one bit about what we were doing. He didn't seem, as passionate about helping us and going out of the way to help us. And you can't ask everybody to do that, of course, but everybody else before this mechanic who's looked at our car has really been eager to help.
Oh, like the guy in Bulgaria?
Oh, of course.
He was like, as soon as you drove in, he's like, whatever it takes, I'll get you back on the road.
Of course, whereas this guy, he just seemed to have an attitude from the get-go. But he was the only person who knew how to do this, so what are we going to do?
Yeah. You're not feeling very confident about this car right now?
No, I'd be very surprised if our car makes it to Dushanbe. Yeah. Very surprised. It's blowing a lot of smoke.
Just then, Rosie came back on the walkie-talkie.
Guys, I think you're going to have to pull over.
Okay.
We pulled over to the shoulder and got out to have a chat.
It could just be burning off oil or something, because...
Well, that was what I wondered. If it's burning off oil, it will be coming off the engine block where oil has been spilt. But if it's coming out that way, that means it's burning oil in the engine. Maybe we just take it the 2 hours down to Kershey, see how it's running,
That's
and
sort
try
of
and
what
get
I'm
it fixed
thinking.
there.
I kind of think that because they just put the engine together, like it kind of needs to ride a little bit. But I don't know.
Well, if we
go the 2 hours down to Kershey, we check everything. We sit, we let it cool down, we check the oil. Aren't we better to...
We're not going back to that same garage.
I don't trust them.
No, I have to be honest, I don't think there's any benefit whatsoever to going back to that same garage.
No, I don't either. None.
Well, me, I'd take it back to them and kind of go, why is it doing this?
Yeah, but you look how long it took them yesterday to do anything.
Oh, I know.
I know the sensible thing is to stay here, but...
No.
I don't really want to. I mean, how much more time and money can we spend on it?
We can't stay in the same town and go back to the same garage. We just dropped $800 and some odd to get the car running again. It's more than we spent on the car in the first place. And now it's smoking. But there's a lot of rally cars that are smoking. Not that that's an excuse, but like, this is in much better shape than many of the cars in the rally. So I'm honestly...
You'll have to keep your eye on the, on the oil.
And the temperature, of course.
Because if it's burning oil, you'll soon
You'll see an oil light, yeah. If it's burning oil, it'll go through that pretty quickly. And we'll see the light come on, and then we stop. And then we add more oil. I think we gotta go.
Visit my website at farfromhomepodcast.org to see a picture of our broken head gasket once the mechanics removed it from our car. I've also linked to the Earbuds Podcast Collective. If you give them your address, they'll send you an email each Sunday with listening ideas for the following week. I recently curated a list for them of 5 podcasts to take you out of your comfort zone. So if you liked my episodes from Turkmenistan, you might also enjoy some of my other suggestions. The link is at farfromhomepodcast.org. Next time on the show, we cross into Tajikistan and have an encounter with some friendly traffic cops doing their best to keep the roads safe.
Sure, they're threatening us right now. We were not speeding.
And you know what they say, the best laid plans of mice and men always go awry.
So basically it's 8 o'clock at night right now. We're on the Tajik-Afghan border. Afghanistan is probably 200 feet to our right. Our car is having issues. And not at all what we planned to do tonight.
Yeah, this is kind of exactly what we were hoping to avoid. You can get updates on this show by following Far From Home on Facebook or Instagram, or by following me, Scott Gurian, on Twitter. You could also sign up for my newsletter on my website to get more info and photos from each of the episodes I release. And as always, I'd be super appreciative if you could take a moment and leave me a rating or review in iTunes if you like what you hear. Thanks to the Public Radio Exchange for podcast hosting and technical support. Maybe you've got a boring commute or you're looking for something to listen to on that upcoming road trip. Check out their Radio Public app for handcrafted podcast playlists tailored to your listening tastes. And finally, thanks to Katie McGee, Louis Campana, and my brother Drew Gurian for editorial assistance. Until next time, thanks for listening. Do you know anything about how complicated it is to put an engine back together?
It's absolutely complicated. Those guys are probably not working with manuals and stuff, and sometimes parts are left over. They put it all together, and they have a handful of bolts and stuff, and they say, well, you don't need that.